The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. This is the place where you come to get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques to leapfrog over the pack in sales, persuasion, and influence. Be sure you visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, tune in, and enjoy today's episode. All right, welcome to the Influencer's Edge. Now, never let it be said that we don't have interesting guests and sometimes dancing on the edge of controversy and maybe even right there in the middle. I don't know if Michael Lee, our guest, would consider himself controversial. I consider him fascinating. By way of transparency, I met Michael through my other persona as Ross Jeffries, the king of pickup, where we participated on a panel of pickup coaches. We were both advocating for communication and empathic listening as the keys to being attractive. Michael, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your biography. What are your degrees in, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so thanks for having me, Ross. I'm honored to be part of your show today.
I'm Paul on this show. I'm Paul on this show.
Yeah, so my background is communication. So I have an academic degree and a background in communication and behavioral science. And the fascinating part is that there are so many things that we can use in order to influence people in the right direction in terms of how we are as a person. So if I'm going to go back, I do have double masters. I have a master in behavioral science, and I also have a master in communication with a touch of interpersonal communication. And when we look at factors that actually make people feel really good, it's actually all about making them feel a certain way, getting them into an emotional state that goes below the surface. And that is especially true when we're talking about leaders and entrepreneurs and salespeople when it comes to really making a change in today's working environment.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. Because traditionally, the image of a leader, a CEO, a C-suite person is that they're type A personalities. They push their weight around, so to speak, and they set out, here's the vision, here's what you're going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you, on the other hand, whether it's for attracting members of the opposite sex or for sales or for business, emphasize a different kind of communication. Talk to me about, I think you call it empathic communication or empathetic. Mm-hmm. Talk about it, but also talk about the neuroscience of it that drives it. Because it's one thing to come out and say, I have a theory. But then when you say you have the neuroscience, I want you to talk about that, the neuroscience of effective communication.
Okay, so when we look at effective communication, that many times are based on empathy in communication. If we're going to go back in time to like 1950s, there have been a lot of studies made by a lot of universities when it comes to what actually influence people. How can we actually make them feel really good in conversations, whether it is in any type of professional fields like psychology, sales, negotiation. So that is something that has been going on since 1950s, and a lot of robust studies have been made. A lot of proper scientific research has been made as well from 1950s all the way up till today. But there is one thing that has been extremely interesting the last 5 years in the field of interpersonal communication, and that is the new research methods that have been used. We're now talking about the neural imaging, where we actually can see what is happening in the brain when people feel in a certain way in conversations. So with enough samples, with enough quantitative data, we can actually see some principles being on the top towards everything else. And when we're talking about what actually makes people feel really good, neuroscientifically, we noticed that it is actually when we are talking about ourselves and what we think about things in depth. That means that we are very self-centered as human beings as default. And it's almost impossible to break that power of being self-conscious in terms of what is the most important element in conversations. It is actually self-consciousness. We are very self-centered. So what we have found out in the last 5 years, basically, is that whatever we thought before, when it comes to external areas, like you are being a great storyteller, or you having a certain methodology to influence your workers, or you can influence your potential clients and so on, what we notice is that many of those external factors, such as using specific persuasion methods in sales, were not that effective when we look at the neural imaging. So what is that telling us? Well, part of the interpersonal communication has been really great based on the quantitative study that has been made. But when we look at the neural imaging, we can actually refocus.
Can I pause you here for a minute? Can I pause you here with a challenge? I know this is some of my audience members I know are thinking, okay, it's one thing to put people in a lab and put them inside a fMRI. That's a very artificial condition. It's not a condition in the real world. They're in a lab, and when they're in a lab, they know they're being tested, and they may respond differently by the very nature of the environment that they're in. How do we know that this generalizes out into the world of the world outside of the laboratory?
Well, so when we look at the traditional way of actually measure things, we have a hypothesis, and we want to have scientific evidence to support that hypothesis. For example, we go on with quantity. And many times we can actually generalize principles and ideas that seems to be scientific proven based on the quantity, that behaving in a certain way actually works in conversations. And the last 5 years, when we can use neural imaging, what they have done is that they have been taking a lot of people, and mostly we can start with when it comes to attraction. Okay, so that is maybe a little bit off topic, but just so people understand the idea. When they want to measure our neurotransmitters in terms of, a little bit like how our neurosynapses is spiking, they just put a lot of guys in the room, one by one. They're going to look at a screen, and on that screen, different pictures came up in terms of how attractive women were. So it came up like picture of ordinary women, picture of women that were not that attractive, and then suddenly we have a picture of a couple of really attractive women. And without, even if they know that they participate in those research, it was very easy to see what triggered the brain in terms of what men saw. And when every time a man saw a beautiful woman, all the 4 main neurotransmitters was released that is associated with attraction, sexual attraction, and bonding.
What are those?
Those are dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin. We are a little bit, confused about the oxytocin, because it is remarkable how men can actually see something attractive when it comes to the opposite sex and feel and creating feeling based on what we see. That is in some way, it goes in some way against the nature in that way. We can almost decide subconsciously that we love this woman just based on her looks.
Yeah.
So that is quite, that is mysterious actually. It's almost like how pheromone works, you know, on animals. It's like we just have a lot of feelings, and that's why so many guys can easily get in love with the people they see on television, for example. Like they have been watching a TV series and then they are completely in love with the girl there, even though that person is not even in interaction with the girl or the woman. Sometimes people are getting completely in love with guys are getting in love with women that are singing or just appearing somewhere, and they just know that this is the girl of my life, and that includes not only sexual attraction.
Michael,
Yeah.
the scientific term for that is stalker maximus.
Yeah, 100%. But that is how we work. We men are getting spelled by women's beauty without any question. But now the more important thing is how women work. So they did exactly the same study. They used the same method for women, and they tried to even spice it up a little bit. So they put different men in different categories: very handsome men, ordinary men, men that was not that attractive, and they also put a lot of clothing on them and put them in different situations on those pictures to illustrate that he might be a person with a status value, a wealth value, and so on. And the surprising part was that the brain didn't react at all when it came to women. Almost nothing. Just a small dose of dopamine that was an indicator of the woman might be interested to learn something more about the man. There was nothing sexual. There was nothing like that. It was just like, I just wonder what he's doing in life. What does he work with? How is he as a person? So that first study that actually measured like how men and women work is just fascinating. That was in the...
I don't know, Michael. I'm
in
going
the
to push
early...
back again. I'm going to push back again because I'm pushing back on behalf of my audience, not because
okay. No.
Right?
So
some of my audience are female. They're going to think, I don't know, this guy's full of shit. Second, I saw my boyfriend. I went, I'm going to fuck this guy. He didn't even open his mouth. So I'm just pushing back because my audience is pushing back in my mind. I know they are.
Okay, so let's go to more relevant. So now when we have those, when we have that down, let's go into a little bit more relevance here. When we look at another study that has been made after that study, they got to measure our neurotransmitters in conversations. We basically were looking in two variables. One variable was someone who actually listened to someone talking, and that person in various of situations was even hired in to be very skilled at storytelling, was very skilled at telling different interesting things to really engage the one that listened. So when they put the functional MRI equipment to see how the brain is reacting in terms of release of neurotransmitters, we saw that not so much happened when those participants that was listening to someone very interesting, a storyteller, whatever he did, a lot of entertainment stuff and so on. When that person was listening, not so much happened in their release of neurotransmitters. And there's been thousands of people they actually tested it on. Not much happened when people are listening to someone, even if that person is super interesting and fun and playful and whatever that can be. But then they do the opposite. They measure the neurotransmitters in the brain of people that were talking. So when they made a different method where they got to measure the neurotransmitters of people that were talking to someone who were listening, and the listening person was someone who was pretty skilled to ask questions in order to come to a certain depth and keep going on there. And what did they see? Well, they never seen anything that could spike those neurotransmitters even close to those people that were talking about what they think about things and about themselves in depth. And one of the most fascinating part is that it is the same neurotransmitters that men got released when they saw beautiful women.
Well, let's
Dopamine,
talk about.
endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin. Yeah.
Well, are you saying, I'm a little confused. Are you saying the
Mhm.
neurotransmitters are released when you're getting someone else to talk about themselves and their the recipient's
Yeah.
neurotransmitters are being released?
So the conclusion here is
Lost-
that when
We
people
lost
are
your
talking,
camera.
okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. We just see your still picture. You're very handsome, but
Okay. I'm getting back again, and now I'm back again. Okay, so the conclusion here is that there is nothing more powerful in terms of how people feel when they are talking. Not so much happening with the people when they are listening. It's only
right,
when they are talking when the neurotransmitters is spiking to the roof. I mean, is when I say significant difference between someone listen neurotransmitter and someone talking neurotransmitter.
right.
Significant is too weak. We're talking about a mind-blowing difference, a mind-blowing contrast between the brain activity towards someone who is talking and someone who is listening. Do you get my point? So
I
the
do
whole
get your.
yeah. So the conclusion here is then how can we make people talk about things that are meaningful? It doesn't matter if it is. It is very valid when it comes to attracting women, but it's also valid when it comes to positive communication for leaders when they're going to interact with their
Let's talk about
co-workers.
that. Let's
Yeah.
talk.
So when we,
Let's
yeah.
talk about
So
techniques.
absolutely. So people in general, they need to feel a certain amount of safety and trust in the working environment, because it's not until then they can really be very productive in their work and express themselves fully. So the world of communication is a big proponent of expressing. So when we are going to work with people in sales, in management, and so on, we want our co-workers, we want our um, people that work with us to express themselves fully. But it's very hard to make people do so because they don't have the certain amount of safety and trust. And now we're talking about emotional safety and trust within the organization to be able to express themselves. So one of the key part here is to implement empathy in the communication with the employers and co-workers, because we are all human beings and it's very, very important that we feel good with someone when we are working, same
What
as
does that mean?
relationship.
So let's get down to what are some specific methods and techniques that you can do
Okay.
to generate that sense of that the other person is being heard and listened to and feels free to talk about what's important to them.
Okay, so first we have to look at what safety and trust are based on, because I can say safety and trust, but it's very hard to put it in a tangible version. We cannot really
Right.
understand what it is. But the truth is, there is a saying that has been from 1950s all the way up till now, and that is this: we tend to trust people, we tend to feel safe with people that understands us. We trust and feel safe with people who understands us. So the first step here, in order to make an influence towards people around us, specifically at the working place, we have to understand them, and not only understand them, we have to make them understand that we understand them.
I understand.
How do we do that? We injecting empathy in the communication. And what does empathy actually means to start with? Many people think that empathy is sympathy or being kind to someone. But the truth is, empathy is actually just meaning understanding another person's perspectives, and mostly emotional perspectives. So if you're empathetic, you can imagine how people will feel and think based on being in their shoes.
Right.
That is what empathy means. Many people get confused about this part. And that is like, but how should I relate to that person? Well, that is not empathy. Empathy has nothing to do with you agreeing with the person. It doesn't have anything to do with you feeling for the person. It's nothing about that. It's much more about you understanding the other person's perspectives based on their shoes. And what is that? That is information. That is the information we get in order to be able to have a conversation that is based on empathy and understanding. And when we are using a certain empathetic tools to obtain there, we can actually give a couple of examples later on.
Do it. Yes.
But
No, do it now.
when we actually are applying empathy in the communication by asking questions, listening carefully, asking follow-up questions, relate back to ourselves, and then also listen to that person. We paraphrase what that person say, and so on. I'm going to go through some empathetic tools. Then that person will feel subconsciously like that person really understands me. He gets me. Once you obtain that level of feeling towards the other person, you obtain the level of safety and trust, and that person become a true loyal person towards you. We want that loyalty. Without that loyalty, it's very hard to get transparency at work. I think transparency is one of the most difficult part in today's environment. So we want transparency. And how do we get transparency? Well, we like to be transparent. We like to be loyal to people that understands us. But it's also another factor and a big saying in the world of psychology, and that is we tend to like people that like us. We tend to like people that like us. But liking someone many times is taken for granted, or is a little bit too light of liking. So for example, like if you like someone, many times you cannot even put a finger on why you like that person. Many times it's based on superficial things or surface-based things. So you like them doesn't reciprocate that they like you back. But if you would be empathetic and really understand that person in different areas of that person's life and that person's perspectives, and then you're showing that person that you understand them, now we're creating the feeling of, wow, that guy really liked me and I like him back. Because how can he not like me if he's so interested in my perspective and me?
I get it, but we need to get to some specific techniques. So let's bring this down to specific techniques and examples.
So now I'm going to give you one of my biggest secret here on your channel. I'm going to give one of my biggest secret here, and that is to start with. When you're asking a question, it can be any type of question that is related to that person. When that person is answering, what are they doing? They're answering in a sentence often. When they're answering in a sentence, there are a couple of words and cues that comes out of that sentence. And many times people can't listen to those cues. But we have to train our brain to be able to listen to those cues, because many of those cues have a superficial meaning. If they're just saying the word, but have a huge meaning beneath the surface.
Yes.
So, for example, if I ask you now, Ross, if you're going to answer me quite quickly here, like what most people do, out of curiosity, what do you think about the place you're living in?
I like it. It's a little noisy though. I don't want to disclose where I live, but I live where there's a lot of sirens going on and too many leaf blowers. So I like it. It's noisy. I would prefer to live somewhere where it's quieter.
Okay, I can definitely hear that you don't like noisy places that much. But when you say I like it, help me to understand that better.
I know all my neighbors by name, and I like that feeling that I can live in a environment where I know people. They're not strangers, but I know them on a fairly friendly basis. I also like the fact that it's centrally located, so I can easily reach out to people and it's got a great walk score. I can walk to lots of nice restaurants. There's a lot of stimulation going on. And if I want to, in 30 minutes, I can be in the national forest.
Okay. Wow, you can actually name every neighbor basically. Wow, that's pretty impressive. But I'm curious, you also mentioned that you love the stimuli in the place. When I'm thinking about stimuli where I live, I'm thinking mostly about the vibrant bar life because I'm a night person. I like to go to bars and pubs, and I also like the beach area that we have. That is what I like. It gives me stimuli. But when you say stimuli, what do you actually mean?
I find conversations like this one to be very stimulating. I'm very much of a people person. I'm very extroverted. To me, interacting with people, playing with their minds a little bit, seeing what makes them tick, and also getting a chance. My top values are communication, connection, and contribution. So I think it's only with other people that I can experience that.
Okay.
Wow, now I'm
So
revealing everything.
no, but so just to so if I'm hearing you right here, Ross, the reason why you love the place you're living in is not the place itself, but it is the surroundings when it comes to people. And since you love to communicate with people, that gives you stimuli, and you also like that it's very, in some way, centered, that you can actually walk to a lot of places, not taking the car, but you can walk to a lot of places that also make that place special together with the forest. Did I understand you correctly there?
Yeah, the forest is a little disjunctive to what I'm saying. The forest I can get to within like a
Okay.
30 to 45-minute drive. I don't go there very often, but otherwise I would say that's 95% correct.
Okay. So even though the forest is a little bit further
Yeah,
away, it's still of a great importance
yeah,
for you,
yeah, yeah.
right? You seems to be very happy to live there.
Uh, I signed on for another year. I wouldn't say I'm overjoyed, but I'm happy here. Yeah.
All right. You know what? I have to admit, Ross, the way you told me
Paul.
about the
On this
stimuli,
show, I'm Paul. He knows
Paul,
me as
Paul,
Ross
Paul
Jeffries.
Ross.
Pick up the
Okay,
introduction.
Paul Ross. So, but with all fairness, when you are telling me about the importance of interactions and you want to have people around you so you can communicate, to them, and what I'm hearing is that you like, talking about probably things that matters a lot about you, and I feel like the surroundings is your surrounding are is people that also are interested in the topics that you like to talk about. So I guess that living in an area where right people is in is probably what makes us happy. That is what it sounds to me that you are. So and also the way you told me about how much you like communications is I love communication too. I mean, it's just a fantastic thing. I think you're a great guy, and you are genuine because the way you have passion for communication is just extraordinary. Not so many people have that. So yeah, I have to admit that.
Thank you. Well, as your neighbors, the Swedes would say, "Quit bra." I'm in Norway, for those of you who don't know. Do you speak Norwegian?
Yeah, I do Swedish, Norwegian, a bit of Polish and English, of course. That's like my main.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
So, so just now I gave you a couple of examples to really understand your point.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Good. You got me talking in a direction where I gave you my top values. I told you is communication, connection, and contribution. They just came out of my mouth. So now you know more about me than someone who would have me on their psychotherapist couch for 3 hours.
Yeah, but one of the good thing here also is like while you were talking, I hear all the cues. Okay, so when you're saying that you want to interact with your neighbors, you want to interact with people. Well, when you say interact, what do you mean exactly? What topic are you talking about?
I mean, just first of all, brightening their day, seeing what's up with them, seeing what's important to them. I like to communicate with people the way you do. So what your premise is, Michael, is if they had me hooked up to an fMRI, right now my brain would be spiking with neurotransmitters.
Absolutely, absolutely. And specifically when it comes, because now the only thing I did now was a pretty light empathy. This was just a invitation to a conversation here. So now I know a little bit about you, like in the, not in the deepest, only like in level one depth, actually. So if I will continue with talking with you based on what you're giving me,
I,
then
I
it's like,
see I see one thing. The
yeah.
one thing that would make me pause is I say, this is wonderful. I want this guy to keep asking me questions, but I don't know anything about him. He's not sharing
Mhm.
with me. So where does sharing your own values, your what, by I know by reciprocity, here's what would happen. By the rules, by what my friend Chase Hughes calls information altruism. It's
Mhm.
when I tell you something of value to me, then through that rule of information altruism, you will feel compelled to share something about yourself with me.
Yeah.
So at what point in the conversation does it turn around and you begin to share yourself?
So one of the biggest thing here is to share something in a very short and concise manner, because just because you are a great listener and you are consciously being interested towards the other person not might not be as interested. She might be still interested, but in order to make the best impact, we tend to keep it short and concise. So, for example, when we talk about communication, for example, let's say I use the keyword communicate. You like to interact with people. So, interact with people could be a key phrase. Then, if I want to put meaning into it, if I want to use collaborative communication, a dynamic conversation, then I would say that when I'm thinking about communication, and then I'm giving you my thought, when I'm thinking about interaction with other people in a meaningful way, I normally talk about health. That's my thing. That gets me ticking. Because nothing is better than talking about self-improvement, how we can better ourselves, how we can go on with life in a better, constructive way. So that is my love of topic. But I'm very curious now. When you say you love to interact with people, help me to know more about that part.
Unfortunately, I cannot because we've actually burned through a 3 minute
No,
time.
so there was just example. It was just an example
I get it.
of the technique. So I didn't mean you to tell me that, but that is how you're doing it. So that is like you relay back. So for example, if you're going to be in an exhibition, for example, and you're going to someone there, and you just want to open up. So you go into that person and say, "Hi, my name is Paul. I'm curious, what is your name? Oh, my name is Chris. Oh, nice to meet you, Chris. So, what do you think about this exhibition?" And that person look at you and like, even though he might be interested to talk, but he's not that open. So he just look at you and say, "Well, I think it's entertaining." And then not a word out of it. And you can see that he's quite timid. It's almost impossible in that sense to start coming in with a follow-up question by saying, but when you say entertaining,
I get it because
what do you mean?
it comes off as an interrogation as well. Michael, we
Sort
really
of.
have reached the end of our time. We can have
Okay.
you back on the show if you'll come back on. But my
Can I,
audience,
can I just, can I just finish that point? Just very fast
yeah,
point. But
yeah,
the thing is that if you share back and you say, "Oh, I think it's entertaining too," I also think it's entertaining because I like the scene, I like the music, I like the vibe of the people in the middle of the place here. But I'm curious, when you say entertaining, what do you mean? Now I shared my part of that particular keyword.
uh,
What I thought about was entertaining because I said it to him. He will be much open to give it back to me what he thinks is entertaining, and that is how you open up any conversations.
all right. We really are out of time. My
Right.
audience wants to stay in the conversation with you. How can they connect with you? How can they find you?
Okay, so now I have a website called thesilkmethod.com. This one is actually tailored for men who want to attract and meet women, but the principle I'm using are scientific principles based on just having a great conversation with influence. So I have been working with positive communication for years. I'm very schooled in the way of taking the best theories academically in influence and make it to practical methods. So thesilkmethod.com. You can find me there.
Thank you. And I know you're in Norway and you speak Norwegian. So Hode, is that how you say goodbye in Norwegian? Hode?
Ha det. Ha det.
Hode. All right, stay on with me after we end the show because I want to have a brief chat with you. This has been another episode of The Influencer's Edge you're going to want to listen to multiple times. Thanks to my guest, Mike Lee, and we will see you on the next episode.
The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform in any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Thank you for tuning in to The Influencer's Edge, where you get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques so you can leapfrog over the pack in sales, influence, and persuasion. Remember to visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com to enjoy even more great episodes like this one. We look forward to seeing you again on The Influencer's Edge Show.